This is Arts of Iranian Diaspora Giving Back to Iran. And the participants are Nazi Kaviani, who is a human rights activist, a writer, and wearing so many hats. I mean, the bios are there, so I will keep this very short, introducing them, and then keep the time and open it for question and answer, because some people have to leave quickly. So I will ask Nazi to start, and then we keep going after that. So how about that? And your glasses are here.
Merci, Aziza. Thank you. Hello, and thank you. This is the second time I'm giving a talk in this room. I'm very grateful to Persis Karim and San Jose State University's Iranian Studies for the chance. Thank you for coming. I never forget the day I left Iran on June 23rd, 1978. I was going to be gone for a few years to pursue a degree in the US, which was going to be helping me earn an even better living upon returning to Iran. In just a few short weeks, I would begin to learn that the land I had left behind would never look the same way as it did on that June 1978 day, that I would become a citizen in the land I was going to visit for a few years, and that Iran would be the country I would visit and long for the rest of my life. For me and most of my cohorts, life would be such that we would end up living a bigger portion of our lives in the US than we did in Iran. And while rooted and loving of our new homeland, we would forever feel nostalgic about the motherland we left behind. For many of the years of the mass exodus of Iranians from Iran to the US, we were waiting patiently for quality music and literature to come our way from Iran. We would pounce on the audio cassettes that were the gifts of visiting relatives, and we would devour books and magazines coming from Iran. All that the Iranian community outside produced and sent into Iran were music productions of Iranians in Los Angeles, most of them loud and empty, with a few, very few, with the promise of lasting memories. It did take a while, but as is the case with any oppressive system that encourages its citizens to escape its oppression, more and more people joined our communities worldwide. Persecuted artists, writers, musicians, and thinkers joined us, while the ones that were already here worked hard to emerge as prominent and prosperous community members, taking their baby steps towards a philanthropy and community giving, and softening and humanizing our embattled image in the media, things we had to learn and develop. The Iranian community outside Iran, estimated to be larger than 4 million strong, has been busy supporting the creation of arts, literature, and music in the absence of censorship and ideological rule, which dominates, restricts, and threatens Iranian arts inside Iran. Let me give you some examples. Sorry, I have to do this technical stuff here. Brothers Mana and Tuka Neyestani are two Iranian cartoonists who used to create work for Iranian publications. After being imprisoned for about 3 months following publication of a controversial cartoon, the younger one, Mana Neyestani, left Iran in 2006 and has been living in exile ever since. His brother Tuka joined him a couple of years later and moved on to live in Toronto. Oh, I'm sorry. The two brothers have created some of the most sobering cartoons addressing issues of identity and rights, the plight of Iranian citizens under censorship, and the brutal 2009 post-election crackdown. Their work not only touches the core of Iranians who understand what they are seeing, but has also attempted to bring universal understanding of issues of tyranny and censorship. The prolific brothers publish their work on a variety of websites outside Iran these days, works that find their way into Iran and the Iranian awareness. And also their work also has an impact, more of a global impact, as they live abroad, and issues of news and issues that are happening in other countries also affect them. This one is the one that Maulana Estani did just last week in response to Erdogan's announcement that he was going to censor Twitter in Turkey. Another example I would like to share with you is what has happened to Iranian dance over the past 35 years. Because showing the curves and movements of a woman's body to strange men is a sin, dancing for women is strictly prohibited in the Islamic Republic of Iran. When for more than 3 decades an art form is banned, its teachers are forced to retire, its studios are shut down, and its students have no place to learn, that art form dies. Iranian and non-Iranian dance experts outside of Iran have kept the Iranian dance alive by studying it, by researching it, by teaching it, and training a whole new generation of dancers. Videos and images of their work makes their way back into Iran through the internet and satellite channels. They also train a whole new generation of Iranians. As you will soon hear, another art form Iranians outside Iran have worked hard to preserve and develop is the Iranian theater. While theater groups have no problems with censorship and can take anything they want to stage, they have serious limitations in finding talented actors and actresses to play roles for them. Over the past 2 decades, dedicated theater, sorry, I keep losing my place when I do this, so bear with me. It's not my strong suit to be technical here. While theater groups have no problems with censorship and they can take their work to stage, they have real problems finding actors and actresses to play their roles. Over the past 2 decades, dedicated theater groups have emerged in Canada, in Europe, and in the US. We have first-hand observations of how Darvak Theater Company, founded in our vicinity in the 1980s, has managed to help aspiring stage actors and actresses grow into competent theater groups that perform routinely. Director, actress, and playwright Sepide Khosrojah will talk more about this. Iranian author and essayist Shahryar Mandanipur is a visiting professor of literature and modern Iranian cinema at Brown University. In 2009, Mandanipur published Censoring an Iranian Love Story, his first novel to be translated into English. While telling a love story, Mandanipur's book demonstrates cleverly and clearly the censorship Iranian authors face and documents for history the effects of censorship in the Iranian literature. Moniru Ravanipur, another distinguished and outspoken author, lives in Nevada and teaches and writes at Las Vegas University as well as Brown University. Exiled author and former political prisoner Shahrnush Parsipur has been living in the San Francisco Bay Area for 2 decades, where she has published her books, and her bestseller, Women Without Men, became a film directed by Iranian artist and director Shirin Neshat. Shahrnush told me herself that while hundreds of thousands of copies of her books are in print in Iran, sadly she has not made a dime from the sales. Her book's gift of thought and awareness, however, keeps giving back to Iranians, it seems. And then there's the distinguished Iranian author Iraj Pezeshzad, who gave several generations of Iranians the gift of his book, My Uncle Napoleon, among others, which this scholar, Dick Davis, has beautifully translated into English, sharing the gift of contemporary Iranian literature with the world. Afshin Naghuni is an Iranian painter who lives in the UK. Afshin's exploration of the female body and his message of tolerance could never be openly said in Iran, as almost all his collages have a nude appearance. An important point about this painter is that when he was 19, He attended a party in Tehran, which was raided by the morality police. When he ran to the rooftop to escape being arrested, he fell 6 floors down, and his spine was severed. And he is paralyzed from shoulder down now. And yet he creates these beautiful works. German resident painter Ali Reza Darwish is a remarkable Iranian painter whose take on the censorship and theological rule in Iran has turned him into a globalist. Over and over again in Darwish's work, we find his invitation to literacy and thought as the only savior of humankind. Artist couple, graffiti artist CK1 and his painter wife Shaqaiq Siruz, who escaped persecution in Iran after the 2009 uprising, are now living in the San Francisco Bay Area, giving back to Iran by bringing the plight of the political prisoners into their art and increasing international awareness about these issues. Taraneh Hemami, a Bay Area-based artist, has received wide acclaim for her works that contain messages rooted in her Iranian background and experience, with a view to give back to the environments in which she displays her work. This is a picture of her installation at the Yerba Buena Center that delighted visitors for 2 years. Los Angeles-based sculpture artist Dilbar Shahbaz uses the theme of acceptance and love for the imperfections of female body in so many of her works. She told me recently that in order to bring her sculptures out of Iran, she has had to make clothes for them. In the Iranian film realm, Iranian directors have been making films that they would never be able to make in Iran, enabling those films and ideas to go back to Iran, albeit illegally. Director Parviz Sayyad's 1980 film, The Messenger, dealt with the story of a state assassin who traveled to the US to kill a dissident. Maryam Keshavarze's 2011 film, Circumstances, dealt with the taboo of a lesbian love affair. Sometimes Iranian films, such as Jafar Panahi's Circle, never get a chance to be viewed inside Iran. Instead, they are seen and appreciated in film festivals and by Iranians in diaspora. But perhaps the most interesting development in this area is that increasingly, one Iranian in diaspora is making documentary about another Iranian in diaspora and manages to impress juries and audiences worldwide, as we have observed recently in Mitra Farahani's documentary, Fifi Howls from Happiness, about the life of the late Iranian artist Bahman Mohasses, produced by local resident Marjane Muqimi. As for Iranian music, while we continue to appreciate the traditional Persian music presented by masters visiting from Iran, the Iranian diaspora community has provided refuge to artists who were not allowed to perform in Iran. Mohsen Namju told me that the largest crowd he ever performed to in Tehran was for 60 people. Shahin Najafi, who wrote lyrics to a song that earned him a fatwa on his head, found refuge among Iranians in diaspora who put up a fierce defense of his right to artistic expression and the right to life on social media, with users watching carefully inside Iran. Nasser Shirazi, a Bay Area resident, is a world authority on the design and construction of setars. He has written a book on the subject that is being taught in Iran. And of course, you will soon meet Kurosh Taqabi and learn about his contributions to the Iranian music in diaspora. In all, I believe that Iranian arts and culture in diaspora have grown and found a life of their own, with awareness not just for Iranian issues and concerns, but also for the world in which the Iranian diaspora community lives. And it is that type of enhanced awareness that is the gift that the Iranian arts and culture community outside Iran has started to give back to Iran. This trend will find new dimensions in the decades to come.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Sepideh Khosroja, and she is residing here in America, is a playwright, and residing here in San Francisco. She's also an actor and director, and we can't wait to hear from her.
Okay, I can't decide if I should use my glasses or not.
You don't want it to be an automatic,
Well,
right?
I put it here in case. I know you said not to thank you, but I want to thank Persis and Persian Studies in San Jose University. I would also like to thank Nazi Kaviani, my dear friend who invited me to this panel. And I would like to thank Kurosh and Shaheen. Like Nazi, I left Iran in 1978 when I was still a teenager and lived most of my life in the US. And I lived it in the Bay Area for 30 plus years. But I miss Iran, and the majority of my activities outside of my job is with my Iranian community. And after living in this country, I don't know if others have the same experience. On a daily basis, people ask me, what kind of accent do you have and where do you come from? And I have to say I'm from Iran, and then they ask me, how do you like it here? And I ask them, because they're only 20-something and I've been living here longer than they have been born, I say, how do you like it here? Because I've been living longer than you have been alive. So I like it very much. So I have a 19-year-old son, and I can see my son also deals with, well, although he has been born and raised here, he deals with exactly the same issues as identity as I do as the mom and the dad. He doesn't know, is he from here or is he from there? And he has no idea about there. At least we have some ideas from there. So for generations to come, we are going to be treated as an outsider, and we are going to be stereotyped, positives or negatives. We are fanatic Muslims, or we are terrorists, or we are the most beautiful people, or the smartest people. I've heard that too. So the stereotypes can go both ways. And in return, as a revenge, we idealize where we came from. Like in Iran, colors are more colorful, fruits are more delicious, people are kinder, and many other magical feelings. Not true. That place does not exist outside of our mind. These are memories of memories of memories, or simply just stories. So these types of conferences assist us to explore our identity, celebrate our successes, learn from our mistakes, and move forward. So I'm very happy to be here and learn from others and have discussions about my experience. As a young woman living outside of Iran with no hope of returning back, feeling like an outsider here, I had to find my sanctuary for survival. Art is the best sanctuary for misfits. And I had a passion for performing arts, cinema, and theater since I was 6, and I started performing in elementary school and in high school. At the same time in the Bay Area, I don't like the word blessed because it has a religious connotation, but I want to say we were blessed with an amazing, cultured, educated, and supportive community, which has been the main reason for our survival. So there is no surprise that I have become a community theater person, because I love the community and I love theater. So I've been doing community theater for almost 32 years. But before telling you my story, I would like to tell you that what we are now giving to others, I want to say that we are standing on the shoulders of many amazing people before us. And we are not claiming any novelty here. The practice of sending students abroad in Iran goes back to 17th century. During Shah Abbas II of Safavid, portrays Muhammad Zaman was the first Iranian student who was sent to Rome to study the art of painting. So the first student actually went to study art. During Qajar and Pahlavi dynasties, this whole thing, these sending students continue to transform the whole Iranian society. And I am currently rehearsing a play called Sleeping in an Empty Cup, written by Naqme Samini, which is going to be performed in Stanford in May. This play is the fictional story of a woman who was among the first group of Iranian women who were sent abroad during Muzaffar ad-Din Shah. Majority of these students went back to Iran and brought with them what they had learned in their host countries. But many stayed back and did not go back to Iran for personal or political reasons. Many people who left Iran and lived abroad continued their relationship to Iran and wrote in Farsi or created arts and that related to Iran. Many translated works into Farsi and introduced writers, poets, philosophers, and other thinkers in other parts of the world. Some obvious examples is Muhammad Ali Jamalzadeh. As you all know, Jamalzadeh lived all his life in Switzerland, but he wrote in Farsi, and when he was abroad, he worked with Hassan Taqizadeh, publishing Kaveh magazine in Berlin. As the example of translators live outside, a prominent example is Bahman Farzaneh, the translator of 100 Years of Solitude of Marquez, who lived in Italy for 50 years and was still still giving back to his homeland, Iran. He passed away in February, and I don't know if you know the story of Farzaneh. He came back to Iran to die in Iran, and he was very lonely man. And anyway, so that's, I wanted to, it was a tribute to this really great man. I started doing theater in the Bay Area, Berkeley, in 1983. In 1985, I, along with other friends, established Darvak Theater Group in Berkeley, and we started staging plays from Iranian playwrights such as Bahram Beyzai, Ghulam Hossein Saedi, and the Farsi translation of other playwrights from all over the world, such as Brecht, Pinter, Beckett, Kobo Abe, and many others. We also started writing our own stories. If we liked something in English and we could not find the translation, we translated the play and staged it. Like I translated Suitcase and The Boxer of the Japanese playwright Kobo Abe. I translated from English, not Japanese. Bella Varda translated Death and the Maiden of Ariel Dorfman. Hamide Ehya translated Night Mother from Marshall Norman, which we all performed all these plays. I started writing plays in 1985. My plays have had a definite emphasis on the women's issue. The majority of original members of Darvak, Behzad Gul Mohammadi, Mansour Taid, Bella Warda, Hamide Ehya, are still active in Darvak after 29 years. It doesn't mean that we haven't had our fights, we did, but we just resolved it and moved forward. In the 1980s and 90s, when I started my theater activities, life was hard both financially and emotionally. For example, I was going to school full-time and was working to support myself, and every evening we went to rehearsals. And I have to say, I'm the mother of the generation that just spoke. In fact, I know all of their mothers. And I was part of the group that their mothers were active with. So I'm the mother generation. We are the burned generation, not them. We worked so hard. We had a small rent control studio that was handed to us by previous members of Confederation of Iranian Students. And I'm sure you remember that small place. The studio was in the unsafe neighborhood back then. Now everywhere in Berkeley is safe and expensive. But back then we were talking of Berkeley, and because of rent control, it looked really bad because the owner wouldn't do anything. But our community got together and fixed the place and made a small little theater of 30 plus seats there. Yes, the neighborhood was very rough, and we often had rat problems, and toilet was always clogged, but it was our temple. And we spent our entire youth there until a fire destroyed the entire building, and we became homeless for a while. And thanks to Mansour Taid to find another place for us to have our studio and our performance place. 2 times now we have moved to different places. At the same time, during the same period, we were somehow disconnected from Iran. However, we tried to keep our Iranian community together and create a country outside of our country. Going back to Iran seemed like an unreachable dream for most of us. Most of us were not able to visit Iran. We didn't have passports, we didn't have green cards, we weren't citizens, we didn't have paper, proper papers for anything. Very few people were coming from Iran. They were coming here to stay mostly rather than going back and forth like as it is today. And I started writing my plays thinking that nobody in Iran will ever know about them, and I'm only writing for me and the people in my own community. My husband Hamid Eya translated his first play thinking the same way. In the early 90s, many of us started revisiting Iran for the first time, and we felt reconnected to Iran. In late 90s, early 2000s, during Khatami's era, the Iranian society started flourishing again, and the borders of Iran opened once again for people going back and forth. At the same time, technologies such as internet, emails, and later social networks revolutionized the way people communicated with each other. It wasn't like during Jamal Zadeh, so you translate something, you wait for it being, I guess, the word setting, or you type setting, typeset, and get published, and paper going from here to here. It's just you type it, you send it to Iran, and I say more about this. And that was the beginning for us to communicate with the motherland. Now we could share our experiences with our fellow Iranians in Iran. In 2007, a collection of my plays was published in Iran by Nila Publications. And during the same era, the plays that Hamid translated was also published in Iran. In 2009, Hamid received the award of the best play translated in Farsi for his translation of Copenhagen. Many of the plays translated by Hamid has been staged in Iran. In fact, his translation of The Beauty Queen of Linain is currently on a stage in Tehran. Yeah, by all means, please do. I get so excited. They don't know how excited I get, but it's just an honor for me. So the giving back of us took many forms. One form was our work being published and being staged in Iran. And the other form is when the new generation came here in the last few years, we spent most of our time training and working with the new young generation coming from Iran, making sure that they benefit from all of our years of hard work here. They don't go through the same hardship that we went. We want them to be kind of very protective, like parental to them. We had workshops, private play readings for the new generation to familiarize them with theater and cultivate their interest in theater, and especially community theater. We have had many play readings, performances with this new young generation, and theater performances, like we had The Road by Yuri Karim Masihi, and Writing in the Dark and Red by Muhammad Yaqoubi, Interview by Muhammad Rahmanian, and some of the short Chekhov plays. These performances included both the older generation of Darvagis and the new generation of Darvagis. And in addition to this work that, I'm done? Oh, well, I'm just going to say,
yes,
yeah, I'm just going to say that another thing I did that it was like, I organized a tour for Mr. Kamran Shirdel, who is a documentary filmmaker, and Mr. Shirdel came here and went to Pittsburgh, came here to Stanford, Berkeley, and after that Columbia. And this was through Facebook with that technology, because I saw his film in '99, and I thought everyone should see his films. So I'm just saying that this whole technology giving back is just it doesn't have any limits. So all I want to say that I again want to express my gratitude to you for having these type of conferences. And the other thing I want to say, I hope this cycle of taking and giving back would continue. And I have some pictures that if there's no time, that's fine.
Thank you. Yes, yeah, we have,
I can wait.
Yeah. Well, yeah. Our next presenter is Kurosh Taqavi, and Kurosh is Ustad and musician of sitar. And if I just want to add 2 sentences, Kurosh. I was born in the last century, so when my father was listening to sitar, my brother and I would go like this behind his back. You know, it takes 2 days to just, and now I listen to it, and I'm sure my children are doing the same thing in my back to, you know, sitar. It is full of memories. So thank you for teaching it to the rest of this generation. Thank you. So please.
Thank you very much. Since we're not supposed to thank you, I'd like to thank you for inviting me. And since everybody has been talking about the new generation back there, thank you for being who you are, even though I didn't know your parents. But I don't think you need to know that I was born in Gorgan in 1965 and all of that, so I was. What I'd like to talk about, though, is what I do as part of a community that exists in San Diego. All of my activities, perhaps like many other people's, are based on my view and philosophy and definition of culture. I've always viewed culture as a mosaic, small pieces next to one another, forming a unified meaning and definition that nobody perhaps can pinpoint and exactly explain, but it's there, it's undeniably there, and it's very known to everyone without anybody being able to completely explain it. My example has always been Qurme Sabzi is as big of a part of the Iranian culture as is Hafiz. Go figure that one out. But it's very true. So based on that notion, once I decided to forget about becoming a doctor and become a musician, which went really well with my parents, of course, I tried to focus on 2 things as far as my activities were concerned. On teaching and on performing. Both had incredible obstacles. Despite, I mean, unlike the previous panelists and Sepide here, you know, my art form did not have the support of, if you will, the intellectual leftist community of Iranians outside of Iran. Persian classical traditional music was not a chic phrase for many intellectuals at the time. Although some of them were my friends, still are my friends, they came to love it just because, you know, people like me insisted on it, and its potentials were realized by many people. So let me briefly tell you about my teaching approach to music and my own performances and artistic approach to it. My teaching aspects of music can be categorized in 2 smaller portions or small categories. I teach children of both Iranian background and heritage and non-Iranian background and heritage. And I teach them Persian classical music. If in a few minutes I would ask Nazi to show you a clip. Through a hard work of an organization called Center for World Music, which incidentally started in Berkeley in early 60s, the gentleman later on moved to San Diego. We have been teaching at the school districts of San Diego for the past 4 years. I think by myself I'm responsible for teaching about 4,000 students Persian classical music. This organization supports the financial part of the financial aspects of this teachings. We go through different schools, different years. We go to different districts. I think I've taught at least 10 or 15 different schools in San Diego and Poway school districts. What you're about to see is, I think it's a middle school in Vista, California, close to San Diego, or Escondido, California, I'm sorry. And these kids worked for about 4 weeks or so with me, 4 months or so with me, and they're playing daf and sitar. If you could just please. Another part of the same program, Center for World Music also supports teaching Persian classical music at the Iranian School of San Diego, which has 250 students, the highest number of students in an Iranian school outside of Iran. Every year these kids, they take music classes. They take sitar classes, they take tombak classes. This year we also started Orff music for them. And you will see them in the next clip. Incidentally, I taught them the same piece as I taught them those kids at the middle school in Escondido. If you could please. Just play a few seconds of it. So we get an idea what we do with kids. The reason we're working with kids, and I'm insisting on that, is, again, my idea has always been, if we are a community outside of Iran, we are only a community when we have our own poets, playwrights, artists, musicians, everything. And I once said this on one of my interviews in a Los Angeles radio station. And a whole bunch of people called me names because I was being a bad influence on their kids who wanted to become lawyers and engineers and physicians. So, no, seriously, it really happened. My idea has always been that once we start working with children, we tell everybody, including their parents and themselves, that this music is not an antique form of music. This is a very alive music. This is what we do. This is part of our heritage. This is what people like me and many other people before me have studied and became whoever it was they became as a musician, as an artist. So I insist on that. And so far, I have to tell you this, of all the students I've been teaching, I have 3 of my students who have decided to become professional musicians. They studied music at UCLA and USC. One of them is getting his master's degree in music this year. So that's great. It's, I think as far as I'm concerned, mission is accomplished. The other part of the teaching aspect of my work is teaching older kids and adults to learn and perform Persian classical music at a very high level of artistry. So if you would please play that. These are my students who've been working with me on private level, and this is our second concert with this group of musicians. But before you start, actually this is a great picture. The gentleman on the right, Arya, he was born here. He's 16 now. He started playing sitar with me when he was 9. Behrad was 2 years old when he moved to the US. Pejman is an engineer by trade, and if you will see the age difference on that stage is amazing. Our singer, who's also my student, he's 62 years old. My youngest student now is 9, and my oldest student is 72. So again, I'm saying this because I want to insist on the fact that this music is going on. It's an active and alive music. We are producing musicians, we're producing great artists, and this needs to go on. And our biggest obstacle has always been, as I'm sure for a lot of you guys who are dealing with art, is money. There's not enough support from the community or from the organizations who are willing to support this kind of art form. So if you know anybody, if you think you know people who are willing to do this, they can go and donate to Center for World Music and San Diego School of San Diego. So if you would, please. Now, going to my professional career and what I like to do, as a musician, as an artist with the kind of background that I have had in music and in life, I've chosen to focus on working with contemporary poets of Iran when it comes to composing music. And my last album was called Osyan, based on the poetry of Furu Farrokhzad and Siyavush Kasrahi. The new work that we just finished, hopefully we can record it in the next few months, is based on the poetry of, again, Siyavush Kasrahi, Abrushang Ebtahaj, Feridun Mushiri, and Shafi Katkani. So that is to just, again, continue who I am as a musician who's been living most of his life outside of Iran with a very strong heritage in traditional and classical music of Iran. I'm sure in Q&A we can explain a few more things if we need to. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Persis. Okay, I have to earn my keep. So I'm going to wrap up, just make a few points, and then open it for discussion. Let me just wear my sociologist hat, because we study ethnic construction. And this is an interesting discourse, because the Russians that left in 1907, after 1907 revolution, they have this word that they use that's called mental suitcase. that if you're in diaspora, you have a mental suitcase of back home, that ideal imagined home that you're going to go back to. Of course, most of that generation is passed away. So this is a good example of constructed identity, of a forbidden discourse that happens in imagined home, where the codes forbid some kind of discourse that happens in that imagined home. But that discourse, which is forbidden at home, also nurtures the exile culture. So we could not have this exile or diasporic culture without that narrative that happens at home. Otherwise, we would not have any roots. So we have that roots that even now, in that circumstances, no matter how we imagine it, is feeding us. So that's an interesting that you keep talking about. We're talking about people who come and bring us that language, that narrative, those stories that we can then change it and conform it to our own identity, to build its Iranian American identity that exists there. Giving back to home, Sepide, that's exactly, shows this cross-breeding between the home and non-home, imagined home and imagined exile that we have. It shows that we cannot keep this culture going without feeding. Hopefully the generation after that, usually what they do, the second and third generation, they create their own identity, which would be very different from those of us who are transplanted. And then, of course, giving back and giving globally. This diasporic culture that gives globally, not only to Iranian American children, but to other children, that listening to new voices, listening to different kind of sounds that is not familiar to them, and finding the beauty of that sound, that if they don't get it then, it's hard for them to get it later. So it's just an amazing work of bringing that and spreading it to just, enriching so many lives of these children. So it's just great combination of how we remake our own identity. So I'm going to open it for questions and discussions, and I call the hands. Yes, sir.
Actually, my question is, this was a personal question for me for many years. I grew up in Iran. I moved here 13 years ago when I was 30. And I was expecting this concept of giving back. I was expecting more things to come from the generation who moved here. For example, music, it was banned in Iran. So I was expecting while I was there to hear good music, but all I heard back there was Los Angeles repeating the same thing. Until people in Iran started going to the next phase and journey to new things. And I'm not talking about one individual, I'm talking about this whole society. The same thing about cinema. So I'm kind of, I'm not sure if I agree with the concept of giving back. To me, it sounds like, with all the limitations there, it's coming from there to here.
There's no, can I respond to this? There's no question about them giving us, because they have been giving us. And the question was us, what we did. Of course, we consumed Kiarostami cinema, all the literature or the Bezai's plays, and of course we were the consumers all these years. The question now is what we gained, are we actually for us to give back to the homeland? So that's why they give. Is it all we are consumers, or is it all that now we are at the stage that here, people here are also giving back? So, I mean, I'm not, that's why I said in the beginning, we are not claiming any novelty, or we are not claiming that we are pioneer of anything. It's just, we are part of this whole very small, we are very small part of this whole the equation. So if we didn't, and as Shaheen pointed out, if there was no feeding us back, we couldn't feed back. We couldn't do anything. We couldn't create anymore. Like if most of my plays is inspired by Bahram Bezai's. I don't want to say that I even got 1 inch close to him, but it was inspired by him. or it was inspired by reading the books that it came from Iran. All we are saying here in this panel was like, we stayed in diaspora, we stayed here, we consumed for so many years, and now we feel we are playing a very small role, either giving something back to Iran, and people who come to Iran, they have a home here, so they don't have to, like for example, Ahmed, you coming back from here, you have a community to go to theater to, you have a community to go to concert to, you don't have to deal with the big huge rats that I dealt with, and you know, things that we are giving back in that sense.
The question was, how do you think we can combine things that we learn from here and stuff that comes from Iran and generate something new?
Because
it's not just repeating the things that are Iran, and that's the part I'm most interested to see, how we can do something new.
I can answer that very briefly because just the last panel talked about that how they create this new, that's just part of Vitarov. That's a great creation.
If I may, very good point. I think the tricky part of this discussion, this discourse, is what giving back means, at least in my mind. I started playing the sitar and learning Persian classical music at the age of 24 in the US. My father, I remember when I told him that that's what I was doing, he said, so wait a minute, you left Gorgon to go to Berkeley to learn the sitar? This is very interesting. And then if I may, in quoting the great philosopher Gandalf the Great, we are all given a very limited time. It's what we do with that time. These are all, as I think, following your point, and I think it's a very valid point. My giving back to Iran or that culture, as I explained it in the beginning, is to share what I have learned from that culture with others, whether those others are Iranian Americans, Iranians who moved here recently, or non-Iranians. That's how I give back. That's how I try to be part of something, an idea, perhaps a new idea that looks at the world as something that has a lot of similarities. It's not the same. For the life of me, I have to tell you, I don't want everything to be the same. I don't want music to sound the same all over the world. I don't go to McDonald's when I go to Spain. I hate McDonald's, period, but I definitely don't go when I go to Spain. So this is the point. I think the tricky point is, what's the definition of giving back? In my book, at least. Obviously, this is a universal idea. But in my book is to share what I have learned from there and from that culture with others. If I can do that, if I can start doing that for myself, I think that's the best kind of giving back to any culture. And to follow up on your point, the source is definitely there. When I want to listen to music to be inspired, I don't listen to my own work. If your precedent for your next work of art is your own work, you have about 2 years to continue as an artist. At least in my case it is. I go back 50 years, 100 years to listen to music, to get inspired. And try to come up with something that I can share, with the audience. And, I told you in the beginning, the biggest obstacle for me as a traditional musician was to come up with a voice that people who had so much resistance towards it would accept it and would actually listen to it. I think with the work of many others, including me, that has been accomplished, and I think that's giving back.
Other comments, questions?
Wow, we were persuasive.
I wanted to ask, Sefer, you mentioned a couple times about community theater. Can you expand on that? How do you define community theater?
Well, community theater is people who do not actually, is not their jobs. They do it like we have other jobs, all of us. That's how we survived. I personally have not received a penny of a grant all these years. Or I have not received any, I have received like maybe 200 or 300 here or there but I've never received any meaningful income from this. First of all, it doesn't mean it's not professional, it doesn't mean it's not good. It only means that there's this community, you get the actors, from the community at points, and you perform it for your own community. And we are not, when we say Darvag, we are not claiming that Darvag is the Belgi rap. So we have, the community's resources for us, from like designing the posters, to the set and everything. And this community is the community who has always supported us and came and saw our work. So going back to what Ahmad said, of course our work is different in terms of giving back. As you know, Tarana, you were acting in one of my plays, and that's exactly the meaning of community. You're sitting here, Yasin was in my play, you were in my play, and there are people, I don't know if anybody else worked in our play. Of course, Hamid is here, but I'm just talking about, we have people here who have already been acting in our plays and, or done something else for our plays. So, giving back is telling people our story. My plays is about the story of a woman in diaspora, most of the time. And that's what my plays are about. So I feel like when I wrote my English play, it's not about pomegranate, which was about, I love pomegranate, by the way. It's nothing against, I love pomegranate. But it's about how an Iranian women feel in this society. So this is not the play that an Iranian playwright in Iran will write. But the play they write is interesting to me, and I do it. And hopefully what I do is interesting to them, because this is the story of a group of people in diaspora. So anyway, you were saying something. That's it? No, but...
Well, I just wanted to say that I've been kind of involved with Darvag as an audience, primarily, and sometimes...
As an actress.
In different roles, but what you gave back to our community was amazing.
Thank you.
Basically echoed our stories through retelling, your experiences, and that was given back to us. I don't know how it transfers. What you do here transfers back home.
Home,
but,
motherland. Yeah.
To Iran. So I don't know about that, but definitely we experienced it within our community in the Bay Area.
Thank you. Then
another question I had is, how do you see those changing audiences through the years? Because it's been 30-some years.
Well, actually, this is very interesting, because I was going to just stop doing theater a few years ago, because I said, what's the use of it? Doing Farsi plays in Berkeley, I mean, this doesn't make sense. And after all these years, and I was like, okay. And I got involved, as you know, with KPFA radio for many years, and I was doing my radio stuff. And I didn't do, until the new generation of Iranians started coming, and Shadi Yousefian was the first person in the young generation who started working with us, and they really made me feel like there's a point to all this. It's not, it makes sense. And every time, and then after Shadi, we started meeting all these amazing, intelligent, intellectual young Iranians that really encourage us to do more work. And that I see that the audience is changing, the Darvag is changing, and hopefully the younger generation are going to be more active. And in this new play we're doing, we have two younger people who are working with us, is Mohammad Talani and Shima Khaki and me. We are playing the new play, so it's good. Anyway.
The audience buys tickets too, which is important.
It's very, very important.
Not just the buying the tickets, the money isn't really that important, we learned, because this is how you have to look at it. But having a full house, getting sold out, being able to pull off shows that has actually more than 5 people or your relatives showing up, that's the community. It's happening.
That's Naz's job. Yeah. She has been helping us.
So it's happening, and people are coming and are taking it seriously. I want to say, just for my own share of this, because I thought this is worthwhile. This really is important. It is happening. It is happening that we are sending some things back to Iran. If you look at artists who developed their careers here over the past decade, examples, or we have local artists who are pretty big names now, like Hamed Nikbeh. He was a singer, he was a vocalist, he was a multi-instrumentalist, he'd gone to music school, he'd never performed to huge audiences. He didn't have fame, he didn't have a reputation. He has a style now, he has CDs. I mean, our own friend, we can see how he has developed, and he has a very serious music career that he takes very good care of. He doesn't want to mess with it, so he gets better. His shows are good, sold out, nice venues. You see what I'm saying? His music is being played on Radio Farda and Radio Javan, and is being heard in taxi cabs inside Tehran, who can actually have that shortwave radio, who can hear that music. It is going back. It is not just for us. It is music that is being produced outside. The whole channel that distributes music for Mohsen Namju or the other rock bands or younger musicians who are producing outside of Iran is working to take their music into Iran, and kids are very familiar with that. And the theater is actually the last one, because it was just an amazing thing that they would actually take this play to stage. That's just so marvelous when you think about it. She left when she was 16, and yet she's turned into a professional whose work is taken seriously. And you know, Iranian theater folks are snobs. If you ever talk to them, they're very serious. They're very well read. They know what they're talking about. And for them to choose this, to use it, I think it's really marvelous. And again, what Kourosh has done, because I've interviewed him several times, and it's a source of honor and pride to me that he has actually managed to make it interesting for those kids who are going like this, and are actually going to sit there to take lessons in music that is like nothing else, and to own it and to be proud of it, I think. And again, just one last thing about this, because there is very little money in this kinds of labor of love, it just actually increases exponentially the value of it that is given to the community. I don't know what kind of lifestyle a music teacher of Kourosh's caliber would have in Iran, but it is one of a lot of discipline in this country in order for him to survive. And there isn't enough words for me to say my gratitude to people like them who have built something that is viable and could compete quite professionally with the quality that would be generated inside Iran. And that was my message for this. So thank you for coming, and thank you for listening.
You had a question. No, I have time. Okay.
Well, I guess I was sort of for all of you, but especially because Nazi mentioned the whole role of censorship in creating a possibility that sometimes out of bad things comes good things, to put it very simplistically. And in some ways, I think that's, the hope is that maybe someday that barrier that people have to cross to get their art back to Iran won't be quite so difficult. I mean, both of you two have been somewhat successful in doing that, both in terms of finding audiences here, but also giving back to Iran. And I just wonder, maybe Nazi, you could talk a little bit about the idea of censorship as a strange bedfellow to creativity, or any of you in that regard, because I think that is really a potent part of Iran's artistic tradition is censorship, and at the same time, against that, people are incredibly creative and smart about how to go about still getting their ideas across.
I can say there's a man whose play who has a play showing this same weekend that we are here. Maybe on Sunday you can catch him at Stanford. He was talking about the way he fights with censorship in theater.
Saturday.
Is it Friday, Saturday, and Sunday?
Oh, Sunday too. Okay, I didn't know.
Maybe.
Afshin? Afshin, I don't know. Is it Sunday?
It's Friday and Saturday.
Yeah,
Oh,
Friday
okay.
and Saturday.
He was talking about, it's okay, we have other plans because we're doing some cooler things here in San Jose State.
Tomorrow night
But,
is done. Right? Tomorrow night we don't have a conference.
no, well, we have another
Yes, we
thing.
have a film.
Yeah,
We
I
have
think
it.
it-
And so he was talking about how, in order to, during those really dark years of Ahmadinejad, when it was the Ministry of Islam, Culture and Islamic Guidance was really cracking down on them, they, instead of taking their plays, which they couldn't get operation licenses to take to stages, they were taking them from small venue, home to home, literally, and working on their craft, because this is what artists do. They have to work. They can't succumb to that, and they also have to protect themselves not to go to prison because they want to do something. So it has its ebbs and flows. There's a big fight going on right now inside Iran on these cultural policies, and every day if you follow the news you will see some new threat, and then yet some new promises of books being published or plays getting permission to be staged, and concerts getting permission to be performed. So that goes on. Yes, it exists. What can we do? It's there. It's for real, and it has. We had, when I was talking about dance, Farzana Kabuli, who is a choreographer and a dance teacher. One time she had a show, she'd gotten permission to have very minimal movements. So the dancers weren't really going to do big movements, or they weren't going to really be very seductive in the way they were doing this. They had very loose clothing, and they were going to do big movements, which they call harakat mawzoon, right? They don't call it dance, they just say harakat mawzoon. And so it has a different name. But on the same night, on this night of the performance, they pulled in with the police, and they arrested the entire cast, the director, all the technical people who were helping them. Everybody was arrested, put in a van, and driven away because they decided that this play, there had been so many people waiting outside and all of that. So even when they give you permission, there's no guarantee that you're going to carry out your performance. But despite all of that, people persevere. We have to support them in whatever way we can.
If I may, on a personal note regarding censorship, my last work, Osyan, Furu Farrokhzad Poetry, a company from Iran contacted me. They had somehow heard the album, and they said, we want to produce your album in Iran. They called me, and I said, sure. And he said, but you know what, there's a little problem. That Farouk's poetry, that particular poem, can you change it? I said, no, do you have any idea what I went through to pick up that poem and compose around it for the first, before? And he said, but I can't do anything about it. I said, but why did you call me? Not only censorship is stupid in Iran, even people who are...
Self-censored.
No, even people who are enforcing it are stupid. They're even more stupid than the censorship itself. So you just have to live with it, I guess, until it changes.
Yeah, well, people enforce censorship, and then we learn to censor ourselves, and it continues. Well, I think it is time to close and maybe get out and get warm up a little bit. And Persis has some announcement about what to do.
We have one more discussion.
Okay, there is we have this until 5.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, but we're going to actually cut it in when we're on. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.